Hey, we're going to be having a look at this PrimeCables sit-stand desk today. It cost a total of $99 Canadian, including shipping. So that's about 70 US dollars, including free shipping. So it's quite an inexpensive desk, and there's model numbers. It's kind of what it looks like. Load capability, 70 kilograms, 154 pounds, which is actually the same as most of the expensive frames and desks. This is particularly interesting because the manufacturer also sells a bunch of other desks which are like $250, but the only feature that you seem to get upgrading to even the most expensive desk is you get the lowest height goes from 27 inches, I believe, to 23. So if that's important to you, you have to pay like $200 more. But weight and other spec-wise, this is by far the cheapest desk you can get from PrimeCables. You do have to pay for the Plus membership to get that price, but it's $10 for 3 months, and they give you a box of tissues and hand soap and stuff, so maybe you can find that useful. As the saying goes, don't turn it on, take it apart. So let's get started. I've taken these screws out, so the motor comes right out. And we have a 6-pin mini fit JR and a what looks like a worm drive motor that looks like a plastic nylon gear. Here's the nameplate on the motor. And we'll see if I can open this a bit more. Let's have a look inside the motor. Here we have this plastic enclosure. This gear looks like it's nylon, and there's some low friction plastic bushings here with no particular alignment features. There's a lot of grease in here. The profile of this gear is kind of interesting. It's it's mostly just a slot. It's not very profiled. And the worm gear on the motor shaft is quite just a thin blade of metal. This is kind of an interesting way to set up these gears. I would imagine after running for a long time, this is going to start wearing this gear out. But it looks like the teeth are quite wide, and this doesn't seem to be a very precision part. So it's kind of interesting. Here we have the Hall sensor. So all this has got is it's got two Hall effect sensors, A and B here, grounded VCC. There's going to be magnets on the motor shaft, and these are going to be arranged in like a quadrature encoder scheme. So essentially you have two split phase square waves coming out so that the controller can measure how far this motor is turned, and that's how it indicates how high the desk is up and down. Here I've got the motor part, and it looks like a pretty standard brushed DC motor with a bunch of interference suppression in here and some ferrites to eliminate the noise from the brushes. We do have some carbon brushes in here and the little rubber caps on the end with springs to hold them in, so you could presumably replace them. It's a little motor. There's no real provisions for cooling, so this isn't going to be running constantly. Have a look at the magnets inside here. If we can get it to focus. There's a bronze bushing in the back. Just a sleeve bearing, same as you'd find in a oscillating fan or something. It's a fairly simple motor. It looks like what you would find in a windshield wiper motor or something, but cheapened. A little bit cheapened, but it comes apart very easily for service. Not sure how well this is going to show up on camera, but it looks like there's a ball bearing in the front. I'm probably not going to take it apart all the way, but it looks like there's a circlip and a ball bearing in the front. And I will quickly find the pinout of this and post it on the screen. Here's a better look at the worm screw and the rest of the motor. Next, let's have a look at the controller, which has a digital display, up, down, and 3 memory presets. Inside the controller, we have a relatively simple looking board. Um, Starting here, we have the power input, a little bit of filtering, what looks like a current sense resistor down here to sense the current going through the motor. That's a motor connector. So there's your microcontroller, which is going to be reading the Hall sensors, the quadriture encoder on the motor, and it uses these two half bridge here to control the up and down. These are just implementing an H bridge for the motor, and that's going to be a MOSFET driver or something, I believe. It's quite a simple board. I do not see any obvious communication interfaces for you to use something like the UPSI Desky or something. There are some buttons which are labeled, so you might be able to just use those to implement whatever custom controller you want. But I'm not sure if those are the communication interface or if that's just for programming. I would assume that if you wanted to drive this desk programmatically, you would have to tap into these buttons or use the pinout of this to just build your own controller, because there's really not a lot going on here. But there's a lot of options for hacking it, but definitely not as plug and play to hack as the more popular and more expensive controllers which use a separate plug like this to communicate. This is just power and signal. There's no UART going on. Of course, here's the AC adapter. It's got like this little Molex MiniFit plug. Interestingly, all of this stuff is UL certified, unlike some of the more expensive frame-only options that PrimeCables sells, which is kind of interesting because this is like the cheapest product and it's actually of quite decent quality. So if we have a look inside this leg, we can see this plate here, which has a lead screw nut mounted on here. And that's like the inside layer of the leg that goes, that rides on these little plastic shims on the side here. And there's probably another one of these on the bottom. And this is the top piece. There's two screws that come in from the side to mount this piece onto the side here. And when the lead screw turns, it forces that down. And when that forces that down, this leg goes down, that little piece inside moves down, and that's how the table goes up and down. So really you're relying on these screws and this piece of plastic to support a lot of stuff, and the little bearings, so to speak, that keep the desk from the leg from rattling, or it's these little plastic pads. So I would assume that over the years, if you were to raise and lower it a lot, if those were to wear out, this would start clunking and getting less stable. Of course, here we also have the lead screw nut, which is entirely made of what appears to be nylon, and the pitch on this lead screw is actually quite steep, so it's quite easy to backdrive just by pulling it in and out. So what that means is this whole table is under quite a lot of... Now I assume it's done this way so that the rotational alignment on the drive shaft between the two sides of the two legs is kept consistent, because you could imagine if this weren't easily backdrivable, like this was a very fine pitch lead screw, you could have one of the legs higher than the other and you wouldn't have any way of equalizing them. But the disadvantage of this is that if this bar, this drive shaft that's used to connect both sides of the table, if this comes loose, I believe one of the legs actually has a warning on it. It tells you to make sure the connection is inserted fully. So if the connection comes off, the table's going to sort of do this, because this is really just going to be free to spin and move on one side. So it's quite important for this to stay connected. That also means that this motor is working not only to lift the thing, but also to support the weight of the desk. So if you have this overloaded, or if you use it a lot over the years, it's going to really start wearing down on that on the plastic gear here inside the motor. Somewhat unexpectedly, the gearbox, the right angle gearbox here, is actually entirely metal inside, apart from the gear case. It's got a nice bearing, nice powder metal gears on here. So this is a really well-made piece. I kind of wish they made the motor better, but this is a pretty robust thing. Again, it's got the plastic bushings in. Now that I think of it, the reason there's so much grease here is I believe this is actually what's taking the axial load here on this shaft. This is probably pressed up against there, and this is sliding against these gears here, and that's what's supporting the table. So you do have quite a lot of force on these bushings here, I suppose. Now, one interesting failure mode that can happen because this is made out of plastic is, of course, if this wears out, the threads in here are going to slowly start wearing out, and they're going to get thinner and thinner over time, and you're not going to notice. And eventually, they're going to get so thin that one day this thing's at, imagine this is at full extension, and you're sitting on the desk or something, which you're really not supposed to do, and this thing just goes ka-chunk, and the desk falls right down to the bottom, and probably onto your legs, or if you have anything fragile underneath it, like a computer or something. I guess it's tall enough to prevent that, but, you know, if you had something underneath it, desk's gonna fall right to the bottom. So that's a potential sort of failure if you had this for a really long time. I guess you could take it apart and inspect it, but that's kind of a faff, and I'm sure nobody's going to do that. So I guess it's good to be aware of the limitations of a desk like this. It's built down to a price. It costs 70 something US dollars, including shipping. So this is including this desk top as well. So this is an incredibly cheap product. I have no doubts that it will work, but you do want to keep in mind these mechanical limitations. It does feel quite smooth right now. There's very, very little backlash, but of course that's going to go up with time. There's a very interesting Mentor pilot episode about a plane that had one of these screws set up to run the tail horizontal stabilizer, and what happened was they didn't lubricate it, and the nut sort of wore down over time, and the stabilizer got stuck, and the pilots tried to restart it over and over. It was like a similar system with an electric motor and one of these screws, and it finally ate through all of the threads, and this thing just started free sliding. And of course, if you're in an airplane, you don't want the control surface to be doing that. And it's quite an interesting video. I'll link it in the description if you want to watch it. And of course, there's a screw on the bottom here to keep the nut from sliding off. Kind of a nice touch is that there's a little rubber mat here. It's quite thin, but at least it's there to absorb some of the shock from you putting things down on the table or smacking your head against it. Insulate that from the mechanics down here. So when I bought this desk, the greatest concern I had was that it would be quite wobbly because there'd be too much backlash in the legs or something. So let's do a quick test. We're going to plug it in and see if we... so I've put a basin of water on the desk so we can see exactly how much it shakes. So right now it's at the lowest, it's at 72. If we give it a good shake... bounces a little bit, but not too much. Let's do a quick comparison with the desk I have here. This is on a bunch of, this is an Ikea curtain on a bunch of Olav legs. Now the camera's going to shake too because the camera's clamped to the desk. You can see the desk shakes quite a bit as well, but the frequency of shaking is quite a bit lower because this desk is much heavier than this top. This top is quite light, and you can see it bounces a little bit, but that's a good thing because it moves less. Okay, so the desk is at 72 centimeters, and we're going to raise and lower it, and we're going to see what happens to the water. So we're at 118 right now, and we can see the water. Let's give the desk a little bit of a shake. It's actually fairly stable, even at the highest. If we push it this way, we can see there's a little bit of deflection. Hopefully this gives us a better visual. I'm gonna knock the table. Now let's repeat the experiment in this way. This time the table is forward and backwards. In an attempt to get more relevant data, I'm also going to use start typing on a laptop on the table. Let's hear what the motor sounds like when it's going up and down. So this desk is rated for 154 pounds, and I'm about 145, and I'm sitting on the desk, and we'll see what it does. I have the desk plugged into a power meter so we can see what's going on. Oh, it's working. We are now pulling 104 watts from the wall, and the desk is going up. So, as promised, the desk will lift 154 pounds. I will say it's kind of wobbly up here. I probably wouldn't sit on it at the highest, if I were you. Of course, going down, not a lot of power here, about 9 watts. So the gearing is quite efficient. There's not a lot of friction. So I guess the worm gear might last quite a while. The 9 watts we're seeing is basically just to overcome the friction of the system. The desk is definitely less wobbly here at the bottom than it is on the top, but at 100 watts going up with me on it, that is quite a lot of load for this 50 watt adapter, so I'm not sure if that's going to be happy long term. I probably wouldn't try to overload this desk too much more than it says. Let's see what the power's like when we run it without me on it. So lifting just the desktop, it's something like 36 watts. So not too bad. And of course going down, about 19. Okay. The desk surface is really nothing to write home about. It looks like oriented strand board. It's laminated together with this nice sort of plasticky top. Nothing wrong with it, but I think I will go ahead and put the frame on my current desk, even though that's heavier and larger, and we'll see how that works, because that was the main reason I bought this. But this desktop it looks to me like it's perfectly serviceable. I sat on it, there's no problems with it, didn't feel like it was gonna break, but it's a plasticky desk, so as long as you stay within the weight limit of the lifting system, you should be fine. I'm also happy to report that there's no problems with shipping on mine. It came in about half a week from Quebec to Vancouver, and it's packaged really nicely. It's 49 pounds of a package, so it's quite large, but they managed to ship it without breaking into the corners. This is in perfect condition. All of the parts came in great shape, so I'm happy that the problems with these surfaces getting damaged in shipping seems to be resolved. Here I've got the Ikea Gerten tabletop mounted to the frame. I've just drilled 2mm holes and put the original screws in just to mount it here. And works out pretty well. It's quite sturdy. Everything's on there. I've got it all the way up now, and it's definitely a lot more shaky. You can kind of see the table continuing to shake after I've given it a little bit of a push. And the monitor also does, but if you're standing up and you have your arms on it, it's really not that bad. Because your arms being on there using the keyboard and whatnot, that's going to help get rid of some of that movement. But if you're really counting on this being, super stable for being up all the way at the top with a huge monitor on it, probably not the best product. But for any other case of if I didn't have the monitor there, it would probably be totally fine. Time for a silly experiment. Let's see what happens if I try to lift myself and the monitor and this table. Unbelievably, it's actually working. Let's see if it cuts out. Well, we're at the top. It's really generating quite a lot of power, pushing all that weight down. Absolutely not something I recommend. Looks like it's gone off on the tracking a little bit. It's gone down a bit lower than it used to be at 0. I'm not sure if that's because I unplugged it to plug it into here, or if I think there's a little bit of an error in the algorithm the encoder uses. So I guess that's good to keep in mind. Overall, I'm quite pleased with the performance of this desk, especially for the price. At $100, it's cheaper than pretty much every sit-stand desk for sale, even used on Facebook Marketplace. So it's definitely a good deal. I think this desk is perfect for someone who wants to try out a sit-stand desk to see if it's right for them, because I know a lot of people don't know if they will actually use the sit-stand feature, because I know some people just have the desk up or down, and in that case, there are a lot of other solutions that you can get that would be admittedly not even that much cheaper. So get this anyway. I would totally recommend this just based off of the price itself and the fact that it works pretty well for everyday uses. The only real problems with the desk are for long-term build quality. I would say that I would have liked to see more metal, especially for things like bearings, bushings, the lead screw nut. But at this kind of a price point, you really can't expect that. The fact that this works and the fact that this lifts more than the advertised capacity without slowing down or showing signs of wanting to quit is impressive, and honestly, I can't complain. I would recommend this desk to anyone thinking about it. With that said, the main drawback for most people is going to be the minimum height. This desk goes down to 27 inches, and that's with the default tabletop, I believe, or I think that's measured to the bottom of the tabletop. So if you need a desk that will go down to, say, 23 inches, you'll have to move up not only to the $179 or $250 dual motor frames, you'll actually have to go up to the 3-tier dual motor $350 one, which, because it has 3 sections that go in and out, those will go down at 23.8 inches. off the ground, I believe. So that's the only thing I would watch out for. So before you buy this, get a tape measure from your ground to where the tabletop is, 27 inches, I believe. That's going to be the lowest this table goes. So you'll want to keep that in mind. But even with that, it's a great way to try out the sit stand feature. I'm sure you'll be able to sell it to someone locally for what you paid for it because it's just such an incredible deal. So this is the product I bought. It's currently on sale for $99.99, and you have to be a Plus member, so you have to pay about $10 on top to get the Plus membership for 90 days. And you also get like a free gift box. Mine came with paper towels and hand soap and a number of other useful daily goodies. But even for $110, this is a really good deal. Shipping's free. Now, I'm not sure how long the sale is going to go for or what price this is going to be after the sale, but typically the Plus prices are still much better than the regular prices. So we'll have to see what the price becomes after the sale. They have 3 colors of this, and it seems like currently the black one is the only cheap one. There's still some in stock. And here they have all the specifications and whatnot. If you are curious and you want to browse or if you want to find the manual, it's all there. I'll drop a link to this product in the description if you're interested in it. And also, if you'd like to help support the channel, I have a referral code for you. You get 15% off. I also do get something from it, apparently. This is the first time I've used this. I don't know how this works, but if you'd like to try supporting the channel, you're welcome to try this. But in any case, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments.